Tom Reed stood at attention in the massive docking bay of the stellar Aegis, trying not to show how impressed he was by the sheer scale of everything around him. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into shadows, and sleek alien ships lined the walls like sleeping metal giants. 5 other humans stood beside him, all chosen for this diplomatic opportunity that everyone knew was really a test. The air smelled different here, clean but artificial, with a hint of something that reminded Tom of ozone. His new uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable, made of a material that shifted colors slightly when he moved. The Galactic Council had insisted they wear these instead of their Earth uniforms, probably another small way to remind them they were outsiders here. Heavy footsteps echoed through the bay as Admiral Vale approached them. The alien commander towered over the human crew by at least 2 feet, his gray-scaled skin reflecting the bay's bright lights. 4 arms were clasped behind his back in what Tom guessed was a gesture of authority. The Admiral's face was hard to read, but the slight twitch of his secondary breathing vents told Tom everything he needed to know about how the alien felt about his new crew members. "Welcome aboard the stellar Aegis," Vale said, his translator making his voice sound almost human, but not quite. "You have been granted a great honor by the Council. I trust you will not make them regret this decision." The way he said it made it clear he expected exactly that. Tom stepped forward as the designated human leader. "We're grateful for the opportunity, Admiral. My team is ready to begin their duties." He kept his voice steady and professional, even as he noticed several alien crew members watching from the upper decks, whispering among themselves. Anna Wilson, their engineer, stood to his right. She was already eyeing the nearby ships with poorly concealed excitement. Tom knew she was probably itching to get her hands on the engine systems. Behind them, Marcus Cole shifted his weight slightly, the former tactical officer's training probably making him catalog every defensive position in the bay. Admiral Vale led them through the ship's corridors, each one big enough to drive a truck through. The walls pulsed with soft light that followed them as they walked, and doorways raised open automatically as they approached. Everything was built on a scale that made the humans feel small, which Tom suspected was entirely intentional. "Your quarters are in Section D-17, Vale explained without looking back at them. "You will find them adequately furnished for your specific needs." The pause before those last words carried clear meaning. They had been given their own section, segregated from the rest of the crew. As they walked, Tom noticed how other crew members either stared openly or purposefully avoided looking at them. A group of maintenance workers actually stopped their tasks to watch them pass, their multiple eyes blinking in what might have been surprise or disgust. Their quarters turned out to be a series of pods adapted for human use, with gravity set to Earth normal and air adjusted to human preferences. It was comfortable enough, but the message was clear. They were being contained, managed. "You begin your duties tomorrow at first shift," Vale announced. "Your work assignments have been transmitted to your quarters terminals. I suggest you rest and prepare. The stellar Aegis operates at a standard far beyond what you may be accustomed to." With that, he turned and left them to settle in. Once the Admiral was gone, Anna couldn't contain herself any longer. "Did you see those plasma conduits in the docking bay?" she whispered excitedly. "The efficiency must be incredible. I can't wait to see the engine room." "Stay focused," Tom reminded her quietly. "We're not here as tourists. Every move we make will be watched and judged." He looked at each member of his small team. "They expect us to fail. More than that, I think some of them want us to fail. We're going to prove them wrong, but we'll do it carefully and professionally." Looking out the viewport in his assigned quarters later that night, Tom watched the stars streak by in patterns he'd never seen from Earth. The stellar Aegis was the most advanced warship in the Galactic Council's fleet, and they were the first humans to serve on any Council vessel. He knew that back home, millions were watching this experiment, hoping it would open doors for humanity in the galactic community. But standing there, feeling the subtle vibration of the massive engines through the deck plates, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on here than a simple integration experiment. The Council's decision to place humans on their flagship had been too sudden, too unusual given their usual conservative approach. Something else was at play, and he intended to find out what it was. The warning sirens caught everyone off guard. Anna Wilson was in the middle of her third maintenance inspection when the ship's lights turned deep purple and a sound like 1,000 hummingbirds filled the corridors. She watched the alien crew around her spring into action, their movements precise and practiced. 2 weeks had passed since their arrival, and so far, the human crew had been given only the most basic tasks. Anna spent most of her time watching the alien engineers work, not allowed to touch anything important. But now red warning symbols flashed across every screen in engineering, and she could feel the ship's mighty engines starting to stutter. Level 3 cascade failure in the primary core, shouted one of the alien engineers, his 4 hands flying across multiple control panels. Energy feedback is exceeding safety protocols. Anna recognized the problem immediately. She had been studying the ship's engine schematics every night in her quarters, and this was exactly what she had worried about. The massive energy core was cycling incorrectly, like a car engine flooding itself. The alien crew followed their emergency procedures perfectly, but Anna could see it wasn't working. The energy readings kept climbing. At this rate, the core would overload in minutes. She pushed forward through the crowd of aliens, ignoring their shocked looks. "You need to vent the excess energy," she said loudly, pointing at the diagnostic screen. "Like opening a pressure valve." The lead engineer, a tall alien named Rix, turned all 4 of his eyes toward her. "That is not the approved procedure. Return to your observation post, human." The ship shuddered violently, and Anna grabbed a railing to stay upright. The warning sirens grew louder. She saw Tom run into engineering, followed by Admiral Vale himself. "What's the situation?" Vale demanded. "Core cascade failure," Rix reported. "We are implementing standard containment procedures. They're not working." Anna cut in, earning a sharp look from Vale. "Sir, I've studied these systems. The energy isn't dispersing fast enough through the normal channels. If we don't vent it now, we'll lose the whole core." Tom stepped forward. "Admiral, you need to listen to her. She's the best engineer Earth has." Vale looked at the readings, then at his crew's failing efforts to contain the problem. The ship shook again, harder this time. He had seconds to decide. "Explain," he ordered Anna, his voice tight. Anna rushed to the main control panel. "The ship's core works like a circuit, but right now it's overloading. On Earth, when we have a power surge, we redirect it. We can use the secondary weapon systems as a release valve. They're designed to handle huge energy bursts." Vale looked at Rix, who shook his head. "It's never been done. The systems aren't meant to connect that way." "Because you never needed them to." Anna's fingers flew across the panel. "Tom, remember that storm in the Atlantic, when we had to reroute power through the radar systems?" Tom nodded. "Same principle, bigger scale." Another violent shudder rocked the ship. Warning lights turned from red to black, the worst level. "Do it," Vale ordered. Anna's hands were already moving. She bypassed 3 safety systems, rerouted power conduits, and essentially turned the ship's massive weapon arrays into the biggest surge protector ever built. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered, and a deep boom echoed through the ship. The warning sirens cut off. On the main screen, energy levels started dropping back to normal. The engineering crew stared at their readings in disbelief. Rix moved closer, studying the jury-rigged system Anna had created. "Impossible," he muttered. "You linked systems that were never designed to connect. It should have made things worse, not better." "Sometimes the rulebook needs to be thrown out," Anna said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "We learned that on Earth. When things go wrong, you adapt." Admiral Vale stepped forward, looking at the readings himself. His expression was unreadable, but his secondary breathing vents were fully open, a sign of strong emotion. "It seems," he said slowly, "that we may have something to learn from your unconventional methods." He turned to Rix. Have your team study this solution. Update our emergency procedures accordingly. As Vale left engineering, Tom caught Anna's eye and nodded slightly. They'd done more than fix a mechanical problem. They'd cracked the first real hole in the wall between humans and aliens on the ship. Later that night, Anna noticed the alien engineers treating her differently. They didn't exactly welcome her, but they watched her work with new interest. One even asked her to explain more about Earth's emergency procedures. It was a start, a small one, but sometimes small changes led to big things. Anna smiled as she began explaining how humans had learned to think outside the box, usually because the box had already exploded. Marcus Cole stood at his tactical station on the bridge, watching the star map with focused attention. Something didn't feel right about the patrol route they were following. After a month aboard the Stellar Aegis, he had learned to trust his gut feelings. They had kept him alive during his years in Earth's Navy. The bridge hummed with quiet activity. Admiral Vale sat in his command chair, reviewing reports. The huge view screen showed empty space ahead, peaceful and quiet. Too quiet. Sir, Marcus spoke up. Request permission to run a modified scan of Sector 7. Vale turned his 4 eyes toward Marcus. Since the engineering incident 2 weeks ago, he had become more willing to listen to human suggestions, even if he didn't always agree with them. Our standard scans show nothing unusual in that sector, Vale replied. Yes, sir, but I've noticed a pattern. Marcus pulled up the data on his screen. Small cargo ships have been avoiding that route lately. Back on Earth, we learned that when the small fish start swimming differently, it usually means there's a shark nearby. Vale considered this for a moment. Run your scan. Marcus adjusted the scanning frequencies based on old submarine hunting techniques he'd learned on Earth, looking for the spaces where nothing showed up, rather than for something specific. The alert klaxon blared suddenly. 5 ships appeared out of nowhere, their stealth systems failing as they powered up weapons. Their black hulls seemed to swallow the starlight. Void Raiders. The sensor officer shouted. Battle stations. Vale ordered, his voice calm but urgent. All crews to positions. Weapons online. The Raiders were notorious for never losing a direct fight. They struck hard and fast, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Stellar Aegis was tough, but 5 Raider ships at once was bad news. The first volley of enemy fire rocked the ship. The Raiders moved in perfect formation, executing textbook attack patterns. But something clicked in Marcus's mind as he watched them. Admiral, he called out, they're using old Earth tactics. This is the same strategy pirates used against Spanish galleons. Divide the target's attention, then strike the weak spot. Vale turned sharply. Explain. They're not random attacks. Marcus's fingers flew across his console. Look at their pattern. They're hurting us, trying to force us to turn our strongest shields toward them, while they position for a killing blow from behind. We used these tactics ourselves, centuries ago. The ship shook again as another blast hit them. Shield strength was dropping. What do you suggest? Vale asked, gripping his chair as the ship rocked. Let them think it's working. But instead of reinforcing our rear shields like they expect, we cut power to them completely. Marcus could see the shock on the alien crew's faces. Trust me, when they think they've won, they'll commit to the attack. That's when we snap the trap shut. Vale stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Do it. The next few minutes were tense. The Raiders pressed their attack, exactly as Marcus predicted. The Stellar Aegis appeared to be struggling, its shields failing in a cascade pattern that would leave its engines exposed. They're moving into final attack position, Marcus reported, watching the lead Raider ship angle for what they thought would be a killing blow. Ready. Now. The Stellar Aegis spun on its axis with shocking speed, bringing its main guns to bear on the surprised Raiders. At the same moment, power that had been diverted from the rear shields fed into the weapons, doubling their strength. The first blast caught the lead Raider ship dead center. 2 more raiders were hit before they could react, their shields useless against the overcharged weapons. The remaining ships tried to flee, but the Aegis's superior engines, no longer playing wounded, ran them down. In less than 3 minutes, the unbeatable Void Raiders were reduced to floating debris. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Vale stood, his breathing vents wide with excitement. "Impressive," he said, looking at Marcus. "You recognize their strategy because humans once used it themselves." Marcus nodded. "Those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it, sir. And those who do study it can use it to their advantage." Vale made a sound that might have been a laugh. "It seems there is much about warfare that the Council has forgotten, or never knew. Perhaps we have been too focused on moving forward to remember the lessons of the past." The mood on the bridge had changed. The alien crew members looked at Marcus with new respect. They had just done what no Council ship had ever managed: defeated the Void Raiders in direct combat. But as Marcus studied the tactical readings from the battle, something bothered him. The Raiders had been too organized, their tactics too precise. This wasn't just a random pirate attack. Someone had taught them those ancient Earth strategies, and that meant someone was playing a much bigger game than simple piracy. Tom stood in Admiral Vale's office, trying to keep his face neutral as he read the message from the Galactic Council. The words on the screen made his blood boil, but he had learned to hide his emotions during these past 2 months aboard the stellar Aegis. "They want to reduce our duties," Tom said quietly, looking up at Vale. "After everything we've accomplished." The Admiral's scaled face showed unusual signs of stress. His secondary breathing vents were half closed, a sign Tom had learned meant frustration. "The Council believes that recent events have given humans too much influence aboard this vessel." Recent events. Tom fought to keep his voice level. "We saved the ship from a core meltdown. We defeated the Void Raiders. Those aren't just events, they're victories." Vale turned to look out the viewport, all 4 of his arms clasped behind his back. Several Council species have filed formal protests. They claim that allowing humans access to advanced systems and tactical information poses a security risk. Before Tom could respond, Anna's voice came over the ship's comm. "Engineering to Admiral Vale. Sir, you need to see this." Minutes later, Tom and Vale stood in engineering, where Anna sat at a console with Marcus beside her. Her face was grim as she pulled up a series of data streams. "I was analyzing the damage from the Raider attack," she explained. "Something didn't add up about their weapons. Look at these energy signatures." Marcus pointed to specific readings. Their targeting systems were too precise. The algorithms they used, their Council military code, not something pirates should have. Vale leaned closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing. "That's impossible. Those codes are highly classified." "That's not all," Anna continued. "The modifications they made to hide their ships, they're based on Council stealth technology. Someone gave them these capabilities." Tom watched Vale's reaction carefully. The Admiral was too experienced to show shock, but his breathing vents fluttered rapidly. A sudden commotion outside drew their attention. 3 high-ranking alien officers from the Council's Military Oversight Committee walked into engineering, followed by armed guards. "Admiral Vale," the lead officer said, "we have reports of unauthorized access to classified systems by human crew members. This must stop immediately." Tom noticed how the officer deliberately avoided looking at him or his team. Anna tensed beside him, her hand still on the console showing the evidence they'd found. "These crew members are acting under my authority," Vale responded, his tone cold. "Your authority is being questioned, Admiral." The officer handed over a datapad. "The Council is concerned about your liberal interpretation of the integration experiment. Until further notice, all human crew members are to be restricted to basic duties only." Tom felt his fists clench but kept them at his sides. This wasn't just about prejudice anymore. The timing was too perfect. They find evidence of Council technology in Raider ships, and suddenly they're being shut out. Vale took the data pad but didn't look at it. Instead, he turned to Tom and his team. "Return to your quarters for now." "That's an order." Tom caught the slight emphasis on those last words. Vale was telling them something. This was for show. As they walked back to their section, Marcus whispered, "They're scared. We're getting too close to something." "But what?" Anna asked. Why would anyone in the council help the raiders? Tom thought about the patterns they'd seen. The raiders' increasing boldness, the council's push for stronger military control, the constant undermining of cooperation between species. "Someone wants to keep the council races divided," he said quietly, "and they're using the raiders to do it. Create a threat, then offer the solution. More control, more restrictions, more separation." They reached their quarters, but none of them felt like resting. Tom looked at his small team. 2 months ago, they had been tokens, a political gesture. Now they were a threat to someone's plans. "We need to be careful," he told them. "Document everything. Watch each other's backs. Someone on this ship is working for the people behind this, and they won't want us digging any deeper." As if to prove his point, the lights in their section dimmed slightly, and Tom noticed a new security scanner had been installed at the entrance. They were being watched. The question was, by whom? Anna couldn't sleep. The numbers kept spinning in her head: weapon signatures, energy readings, classified codes. She sat up in her quarters, pulled out her data pad, and started working. The council might have restricted their duties, but they couldn't stop her from thinking. A quiet knock on her door made her jump. It was Marcus, looking tired but alert. "You need to see this," he whispered. "Tom's already waiting in the maintenance shaft." They crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnels, spaces too small for most alien crew members to use comfortably. Tom was waiting in a junction, his face lit by the soft glow of emergency lights. "Look what I found in the communications logs," he said, showing them his pad. "Every raider attack in the past year. Plot them on a map." Anna and Marcus watched as dots appeared on a star chart. At first, it looked random, but then a pattern emerged. "They're creating a perimeter," Marcus said, "pushing civilian ships away from these sectors." He pointed to a cluster of seemingly empty space. "Empty on official maps," Tom agreed. "But look at this." He overlaid a different chart, showing energy readings. A massive spike appeared in the supposedly vacant sector. "What is that?" Anna asked, though she already had a horrible feeling she knew. "A shipyard," Tom said grimly. "Hidden in a sensor dead zone. The raiders aren't just pirates. They're a private army. Someone's building them a fleet." A noise in the tunnel made them all freeze. Footsteps passed below, then faded. "We need proof," Marcus whispered. "Real proof, not just data we've pieced together." Anna's mind raced. The raiders' comm system used council codes. If I could access the main communication array, I might be able to trace. "Too risky," Tom cut in. "They're watching us too closely." "But they're not watching me as closely as you two," a new voice said. They all spun around to find Wren, the ship's first officer, crouching in the tunnel behind them. Tom reached for a weapon he didn't have, but Wren held up his hands. "If I wanted to report you, security would already be here." "Why aren't they?" Marcus asked. "Because I've seen the same patterns you have," Wren said. "And unlike you, I know who's behind it. High Commander Dex and his supporters in the council. They'd been pushing for military control of lesser species for years." "Why tell us?" Tom asked. "Because they're winning," Wren replied. "The raiders attack, people get scared, and Dex's faction gains more power, more ships, more control. They're using the raiders to create a crisis only they can solve." Anna's data pad beeped softly. A new transmission had been picked up. Raiders were going to hit a civilian colony. A big one. "We can warn them," she said. "The council will say it's a false alarm," Wren countered. "They've done it before." "Unless." "Unless what?" Tom asked. "Unless we can prove the connection." Ren pulled out his own pad. I can get you into the main communication array, if your engineer can trace those codes back to their source. I can, Anna said firmly. But they'll know someone accessed the system. Not if we time it right, Marcus said, his tactical mind working. The raiders are about to attack. That means Dex's people will be busy coordinating with them. They'll be too focused on the attack to watch internal systems. Tom looked at each of them. If we're wrong about this, we're finished. Best case, we spend the rest of our lives in a prison cell. And if we're right? Anna asked. Then we expose a conspiracy that goes to the heart of the Galactic Council, Ren said, and maybe prove that cooperation between species is better than control. They all sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the ship's systems barely audible through the tunnel walls. I've got a better idea, Tom said finally. We don't just expose them. We stop them. If we can warn the colony and prove who's behind the raiders at the same time. How? Marcus asked. Tom smiled grimly. By giving High Commander Dex exactly what he wants, a crisis. But this time, one he can't control. As they began to plan, Anna felt a mix of fear and excitement. They were about to commit what the Council would call treason. But sometimes, she thought, the right thing looked like treason to the wrong people. The stellar Aegis rocketed through space toward the raider fleet, its engines burning bright against the darkness. On the bridge, Tom watched the distance counter tick down. Everything they had fought for came down to the next few minutes. Enemy ships are moving to intercept, Marcus called out. They're breaking formation to surround us. Exactly as expected, Vale said calmly. Anna, are you ready? Anna's fingers flew across her engineering console. Broadcasting frequencies locked in. The moment they start transmitting orders to their raiders, everyone in the sector will hear it. The first shots flashed past the ship. The raiders had opened fire, but something was off about their attack pattern. They weren't shooting to destroy. They want to disable us, Tom realized. They need to keep their secret weapon intact. Vale nodded. Helm, take us straight through their line. Marcus, target only the ships that move to block us. Anna, divert all spare power to forward shields. The space battle erupted around them. The stellar Aegis plowed forward, its advanced weapons blazing. 2 raider ships exploded, 3 more spun away damage. But more kept coming. Admiral Vale. High Commander Dex's voice boomed over the command channel. Stand down immediately. You are violating direct orders. Now, Anna, Tom shouted. Anna slammed her hand down on her console. Suddenly, every communication channel burst open. Not just Dex's orders, but hundreds of encrypted commands flowing between the Council ships disguised as raiders and their real fleet. All ships in range, Anna reported, grinning. Every vessel for 3 sectors can hear them coordinating with the raiders. They're trying to shut it down. But I'd locked them out of their own systems. The reaction was immediate. The real raiders, realizing they'd been used, broke away from the Council ships controlling them. Confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, Marcus announced. Civilian vessels, merchant ships, even a few independent warships. They're all receiving the transmissions. Vale stood from his command chair, broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Vale of the Stellar Aegis. You are witnessing proof of corruption within the Galactic Council. High Commander Dex and his supporters have been using the raiders to create fear, to justify their grab for power. No more. The battle shifted. The exposed Council ships found themselves caught between the Stellar Aegis and the growing number of arriving vessels. Some tried to flee. Others surrendered. Dex's command ship is making a run for it, Marcus reported. Not today, Vale growled. All power to main guns. Target his engines. The Stellar Aegis's primary weapon charged up, glowing with the same energy that had once threatened to destroy the ship. The shot lanced out, caught Dex's fleeing ship, and shattered its engine section. Colony defense systems are online, Ren reported. They're safe. It's over. The bridge crew cheered, humans and aliens together. But Tom noticed Vale staring at the tactical display, his expression troubled. "Sir," Tom asked quietly. "The council will not be pleased," Vale said. "Even with proof of corruption, they will resist change. They fear it too much." "Then they'll have to fear something else more," Tom replied. "Look." On the main screen, ships were still arriving. Not warships now, but civilian vessels. News ships, transport ships, ships from every species in the council, drawn by the broadcast, coming to witness history. "The council fears change," Tom continued, "but they fear losing power more. And after today, everyone will know what happened here. How their propaganda about lesser species was a lie. How humans and aliens working together accomplish what neither could do alone." Vale's breathing vents opened fully, a sign of pride. Perhaps that was the true purpose of the integration experiment. Not to prove humans could serve on our ships, but to prove we could learn from each other. Hours later, as council peacekeepers took Dex and his conspirators into custody, Vale made one final shipwide announcement. "Crew of the Stellar Aegis," he said, "today marks a new chapter in galactic history." The council called this an integration experiment. They were wrong. This was never about integration. It was about evolution, about becoming something greater than we were, together. He turned to Tom and held out two of his four hands. "The council will need new leadership, people who understand the importance of unity over control. Will you help us build that future?" Tom shook both offered hands. "That's why we came to the stars, sir. Not to follow, not to serve, but to help create something better. Together." Outside the ship's windows, the stars shone bright and clear. The same stars that had once seemed to separate humanity from the galactic community now bore witness to a new beginning. The council's greatest blunder had become its greatest opportunity, all because they had underestimated the power of trust, cooperation, and the human spirit.